Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Michelle Rodriguez, who's the superintendent of Stockton Unified School District in California. And I've had the privilege of knowing Dr. Rodriguez in two previous districts as well. Well, I'd like to start by raising this question. In all three districts, you have brought SIPs in for the foundational reading skills. And I think you've seen strong evidence of results in all cases. So can you talk about why you chose SIPs and why now for Stockton?
When we talk about education, we often talk about personalized learning. We talk about looking at the learner as an individual and how do we accelerate them from the point that they're at. And I think that SIPS is the closest to that we can get on a system wide. So when we think of SIPS, something that's important to me is that it's mastery based. So it's not based on what I taught you, but it's actually based on what I learned and where I'm going to move from there. Second, it's all about that rewiring of the brain, right? Looking at the routines, looking at SIPs and seeing how can we support our most vulnerable students that possibly are going to have reading difficulties, and how do we give them a structured, systemic approach that is linked to the science of reading that allows us to make those accelerated growths. For Stockton specifically, when I got here, they already had started to implement SIPs through their CSI schools. So for non-California school districts, those are schools that are like in program improvement and receive additional monies. So we were already seeing really great growth, but what we were not doing is we weren't doing it district-wide required. So when I got here, we had a large group of teachers who were voluntarily doing SIPs. But I spent my first year kind of along with my assistant superintendent, Casey Klappenbach, really getting the team ready to do a requirement. So this year was the first year that every teacher K2 in the district was required to replace benchmarks portion of phonics and put it as SIPs. And so for us, it was, we needed it because we had our special education students were running at only 6% proficient or 6% at grade level. And our English learners were at 15%. So we knew that we could no longer just have it be voluntary for teachers, but it really needed to be a mandate. And our Board of Trustees supported that, as well as the staff themselves. So we have over 5,000 staff members here within Stockton Unified, and we have everywhere from our intervention teachers to our teachers to our instructional assistants that are all helping to support the SIPS implementation.
I'm curious because of what you said. You've used it to replace the word recognition components in the core. Do you also use it to intervene in addition for students who may need double dosing, for example?
Every child K2 receives core instruction of SIPs, and then based on their mastery-based test, they receive the distributed practices or the double dose. So this past year, we began to implement intervention teachers similar to what I did in previous districts. This upcoming school year, we will have an intervention teacher in each and every elementary school. So we have K8s here, so we're a K-12 district, but we have K-8 schools. We have no elementary, middle schools. We're K-8s. So this upcoming year, we'll have 43 intervention teachers at the K-8s. And then we will also, for the first time, have intervention teachers at the high schools. So we're expanding to, we had it in some schools this past year where we were using SIPs Plus for our older students. We will now do that at a higher level this upcoming school year. So every intervention teacher is trained on SIPs, and that is one of the requirements. When they came on and they signed on to be an intervention teacher, they knew that part of their job was going to be the SIPS curriculum. And so we're doing that. We are showing really significant growth at the K2 level, but obviously we haven't done it district-wide for our older students, and so we do have students that need that support. So we're doing it in both special education classrooms, so we're replacing it in special education classrooms as well, and then we're also going to be doing it for our most at-need students at the high school as well.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you're getting results, K2 in particular. Can you talk about what you're starting to see in the data?
It's pretty dramatic. I'm really excited because teachers are seeing it. So I have a saying, change experiences to change beliefs to change expectations. And we're seeing that here. So we had some that didn't believe that their first graders could read at the level that they are. And now teachers are seeing a lot of efficacy. So we went from last year, we had 16% of our students that made progress to grade level. This year, it was 35%, 35.7 to almost 36%. So we're really excited about that huge jump. We're seeing it in our most vulnerable populations as well. And so our English learners last year were at 15.8%. This year, they're at 33.9. So almost 34% of our English learners are reading at grade level or above. And yesterday I had a teacher that said to me that she had out of Primary Years Academy that they had 80% of their second graders were reading at grade level or above. And she said, and I want you to remember the or above part, because what we're finding, and that's the beauty of SIPS, is it's mastery based. So if I am doing well and I am above grade level, I'm going to continue to receive the instruction that I need. And so a lot of times when we think of percentages, that we almost lose the children in those percentages. And so just thinking of raw numbers, pure numbers. So last year we had 494 students that wound up reaching their goal level target. This year it's 2,028 students. And so when we think about the 1,500 extra children that are going to go to their next grade level, being able to read, being able to engage in instruction, and being able to engage in their learning in a more meaningful way, that's awesome. And so, like I had mentioned, we're at 35%, so we have a long ways to go, but you can't negate 20% growth. And so we, look forward to pairing that along with, some of the other screeners that we're doing so that we can continue to, again, change the experiences of teachers, of children, of parents, so that they believe different. They believe different about themselves. They believe different about their students. And then therefore our expectations for ourselves, for our students, will then grow as well.
And I think implementation is a critical element. So, can you talk about all that you did to get this to be an effective implementation, including how you garnered support from the teachers, the administrators, and even the community?
So we have a change management strategy here. It's really off of Cotter's work. So we do believe that you have to start with the why. So you have to start with the urgency. So we started with that urgency. Step 2 is having a group of people who already believe. So we already had a subset of principals. We had a large subset of teachers who really believed in SIPS. They had been doing it for a couple of years, seeing a lot of the work. And so we got those first 2 steps. Those 2 first steps occurred in my first year as superintendency. The third step occurred this beginning of this year or end of last year, where we said, you know what, this is best for kids, right? Science of reading is best for children. Having a systemic approach to teaching children is the best way. And so then that vision and the requirement kind of came in. We are using DIBELS as well, looking at our DIBELS data, looking at our SIPS data, and helping people to see after each administration, and just as they're looking at their mastery tests, of this is working, right? So celebrating those wins, making sure that we're recognizing the people's hard work, and giving those parallel support. So we always say high expectations, high support. So something that I learned specifically in Santa Ana was that you have to do job embedded professional development. We want to provide job embedded coaching while teachers are teaching with their own children. So sometimes we're bringing in collaborative classrooms and their coaches, and sometimes they are modeling for a teacher. Sometimes they're doing side-by-side teaching with the teacher. And sometimes it's I'm watching you because you got it down and we just need to do modifications. And then that can't happen daily or even monthly. It happens frequently, but what has to happen daily is that principals are also going into the classrooms. They have a look for sheet, so they know what they're looking for. So they're providing professional development, because another thing that we learned is it has to be multi-level, right? You can't just focus on the teachers. You can't just focus on training the intervention teachers. You have to focus on training all the bookends. So that goes from my coaches here at the district level to the principals to our instructional assistants. So we want everybody to be able to be providing that feedback. And then we do something that we call equity walks with the Ed Services team, where they go through the schools and they calibrate it. And so those are really trained teams that go in so that we know what supports we need to provide, because our schools, there's more than 40 of them, they're at different levels, right? So some of them need different support than others. And so just as we're asking our teachers to personalize for our students, we're asking our principals to personalize for our teachers. Us as a district, we have to personalize for our schools. So although the concept and the theory and the framework is the same, it really is personalized to what are we seeing during the equity audits, what are we seeing out of the data, to then know what supports do we need to provide each school to reach the goals that we're wanting them to reach.
So you're really differentiating throughout the entire system in terms of supporting the implementation.
Yeah, I think if you look at where school districts have been really successful, they have a framework which everybody works within, but then there's a personalization within the different schools. Yeah, so we have found it to be successful, and we're continuing to move that work forward. It is helpful, and I have to continue to give him credit. It is helpful that Casey Clappenback, my assistant superintendent of Ed Services, has been with me in all three of those districts, and is just a genius when it comes to curriculum and instruction, and has been the real motor behind this initiative. So couldn't do it without his work and his team's work.
Now, I'm curious because SIPS is organized by student skill. You know, you've got the beginning, the extension, the challenge. How did you organize groupings within your schools?
It's not really my favorite term, but they call it platooning, or they group. So we platoon, and we platoon sometimes across 2 grade levels. So that's something that we're doing different here, because we just are seeing such a range in children's need. Is sometimes it depends. A lot of times it is within just the grade level that we're platooning. So we help a teacher get really great at beginning, and she teaches beginning. We have another teacher that is teaching extension. as will happen, and it happened in Pajaro Valley too, you will move out of as many needing to support beginning. So you will have to help teachers get themselves sometimes to the next level. But we have some smaller K-8s here. And so because of that, sometimes we platoon across 2 grade levels. So sometimes we'll have first and second grade teachers that are platooning together. And then just like it should, the students, according to where it says their entry point is, they are then assigned to that group. And then through the mastery test, we then decide how we continue to move them.
So you shift kids, I assume, as you based on those mastery tests. In other words, it's flexible because if a kid is moving quickly, you're probably making some changes in the grouping.
For me, the whole essence of SIPs is that mastery has been reached, right? So many times, even when I was a teacher, I was tracking my students, but there was almost an expectation that I taught it, so then they learned it. And so here, there's a validation of that. And when students aren't learning, when they aren't picking up like a specific group, then we look at practices, right? We look at, okay, so how are we doing the routines? Are we doing the corrective routines as we should? Are we doing it the way that it's laid out, right? Because there's a scientific reason of why the routines are the way that they are. And so we try to focus heavily on not modifying the routines and sticking to them.
So those kids that might be starting, say, in beginning
Mm-hmm.
as first graders or even second graders, how do you accelerate them so they can get to the grade level standard? That's a question I know people frequently ask. I mean, if you're not starting kids in grade level content, how do you manage to get them there?
Our SBAC scores went up 4% this year for 3rd through 12th grade. So we're seeing impacts not just in our K2. When they're in the much higher grades, we use SIPS Plus, which has an accelerated path to ensure that you can get them out and get them further. I think for us, we have been pretty strict with, we are going to continue. If they're a second grader and they're in beginning, that's what they're going to be. But then let's also give them simultaneously additional time and support with the intervention teacher. So they basically get a double dose, even though they're not failing the mastery test, right? So our lowest performing first and second graders, specifically second graders, and the next year will be third graders, because we'll add on a grade as we do each year. They're not only getting instruction from the teacher that they have during platooning time, and we call it win time here, but they also are getting support from the intervention teacher. And so that allows us to then accelerate them. You'll be amazed if you actually do SIPs daily and you do a full lesson, which sometimes people wind up chopping up lessons because a lesson can be a little bit longer. But if you do that, what you will find is those students will quickly go to extension, quickly go to challenge. They will quickly move on if you just are consistent and make sure that students are getting that double dose, that distributed practice, that they will quickly move into the other levels.
That makes sense. But you said something that struck me. On the SBAC, you were seeing growth. So what that's telling me is that it's more than just the word recognition and foundational skills, because you're seeing results then in comprehension.
We did a district-wide big push on writing. I'm a big proponent of decoding and encoding are explicitly linked. Now, it just wasn't district-wide. We did do SIPs much more, and we did have a subset of intervention teachers. We had 19 intervention teachers this past year. We just couldn't, we needed to make sure that we had classroom teachers, so we couldn't hire all 43 last year. This upcoming year, we will have them. But yeah, we were doing SIPs and pull out for a lot of our 3rd through 8th grade students too. And then when you couple that with the writing, I really do think that sometimes when students are having a challenge with the decoding, the encoding is a great layer on top of it. And so we did find that as well. And then the equity walks aren't just looking at SIPs, right? We're looking at, are we doing the district approved curriculum, and are students taking on the work? So often, or sometimes, when you go into classrooms, you wind up seeing the teacher talking the entire time. You see the teacher is exhausted because she or he is doing the majority of the work. And so part of what we're focusing on is, are the students the ones that are doing the work, right? Are they the ones that are engaged? Is it not just quiet compliance, but is it actually active engagement from our students? Culture is contagious, right? It is contagious. So when you have K2 teachers that are saying, look at this, look at how great my students are doing. For example, the 2nd grade teacher that spoke to me yesterday, she's not just saying that to me, right? She's saying that to people throughout her school. And so when people are excited about their children's progress, when they're excited about what children are doing, that's infectious with other people, and it gets other people to want to say, oh, what are you doing? I keep saying it's not about 1 year's growth. It's not even about 2 years growth. It's about sustained growth. And so how do we 3 years from now, 4 years from now, look back and say, wow, we made an impact in the lives of children?
That's pretty profound. And that is what we're all about. And I think you touched on features of SIPs that you're seeing, that active engagement, the kids getting the correction when they need the correction. All of those are features that cognitive science tells us are how we learn, are how people learn, and it's built in to the SIPS curriculum. It's engineered to work, and I think that's part of what you've expressed and why you're choosing it, and that's why it's effective as a mastery program. Well, I have one more question for you. You've now worked for 3 years with the collaborative classroom. I know you also worked with my former organization, Core Learning, and I'd like you to talk about your experience working with the collaborative classroom over these 3 years and how they've supported you.
I really appreciate that. It's not just this is what we give districts and this is what you're going to receive, but you really sit down with superintendents, with assistant soups, directors, and personalize what is it, what are the goals of the district, where are the entry points that you want to have, and then personalize the contract, personalize the professional growth for the district based on those needs and based on those goals. And so a lot of times organizations come in and they say, this is what we can offer you. And what I have found with both core and collaborative classroom is that you are willing to move and pivot with us. The quality of the coaches are excellent. The level of the coaches and the ability to coach us and build our capacity has been phenomenal. I think everybody wants sustainability. So when you're thinking as a superintendent or assistant soup, you want to be able to sustain the effort, right? Not just 1 year, not just 2, but continuous. And so part of that is really being able to have a organization come in that can build your own capacity. And so you guys have very much done that, right? Helped us to, again, provide professional development at multiple levels. And then those multiple levels are differentiated. So what you are doing for our coaches is not exactly what you're doing. It's not what you're doing for our principals, for our teachers. And so I really appreciate that as we just continue to look at cognitive science, the science of reading, you as organizations continue to evolve and change. Your core values and core beliefs stay the same, which is that every child deserves the right to have effective instruction and be a competent reader, because we know that opens doors for them. But I have seen over time the organization continue to morph as we learn more about brain science, as we learn more about the science of reading, to continue to change and evolve. And I think that that's important because that helps me evolve, right? We're getting the latest of information, not necessarily what you were providing 5 years ago, what you were providing 3 years ago. I wouldn't use you guys unless I knew that you could be the support that we need. Many times when school districts have hard fiscal times, we look at outside consultants, and those are the ones that go. And I would say that in the past, we came to hard fiscal times. We never let go of core. We never let go of collaborative classroom, because in the end, that's what the money is supposed to go towards. It's supposed to go towards us improving the system for children. And I do believe that you guys help us do that.